just ran up to the car to get his fighting flag.
Jake's the one who got lost coming.
Okay, Jake got lost in the big town of Cushing.
I know it. I toured parts of Cushing I didn't know existed.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. And then our friend Lee Denny's here, and our city manager Steve Spears is here.
Good.
And so we're just glad you guys came out. Senator Inhofe is a lifelong conservative.
Well, you don't need to read all that stuff.
You good?
Yeah. I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be rude.
You're not rude, dear.
Okay.
At all.
But I thought we got, by the way, I thought we got rid of those long introductions.
Well, that was just 4 sentences.
Oh, you go ahead and read it.
No, that's
Well, let me kind of visit with you a little bit about, a lot of people are not aware of what the differences between the House and the Senate. In the Senate, you're kind of a product of your own committee. That's where almost the stuff you see on TV on the floor of the Senate, that's all for your consumption. That has nothing to do with the process. The decisions are really made in the committees. So what I did when I got to the Senate in 1994, knowing that it's a seniority system, now you can argue with it, and I don't think it's a good idea, and that ought to be changed after I'm going. But I got on, the 2 committees I got on are the 2 most significant committees in my opinion. One is the National Defense, Senate Armed Services Committee, and I'm the ranking member there. And the other is Environment and Public Works. Now that affects you guys. It's the largest jurisdiction in the Senate. So it's not just all the roads and highways and that stuff. It's all this over-regulation that's killing America. I want to make one, I really don't like Obama, but everybody knows that to start with. But right now you're hearing about Obamacare. That's how every time you turn on the TV or turn on the radio or pick up a newspaper, it's all about Obamacare, but there's some other things that are going on right now that are just as serious as that. So I made a decision. I wasn't even going to run for re-election until I thought he was going to be defeated a year ago, and it didn't happen. And I thought, you know, we have to get back and ride this thing out. The 3 areas that I'm involved in having to do with him that no one else will talk about, and none of the other members will talk about, are what he's doing right now to our defense system. He's literally disarming America. I remember that his first budget, that was 4.5 to almost 5 years ago. In his first budget, I knew what he was going to do to the military, so I went to Afghanistan so I could respond from there, knowing that I'd get national attention doing that. In his very first budget, he did away with our only 5th generation fighter, the F-22, did away with our lift system, the C-17, did away with the future combat system, and he did away with the ground-based interceptor in Poland. That's the only protection we have on the East Coast from a missile coming in from Iran, which I consider to be the greatest threat. Now, that was his first budget. And since that time, he has taken out of the system $487 billion out of defense, put it in all of his social systems, and with the sequestration that's coming up, it'll be another $500 billion. Now that's, I know I'm throwing around a bunch of numbers, and it's hard to pick up and to understand, but somebody's got to talk about this, because I could give you quotes I carry with me from General Dempsey, who's the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, that will tell you that we're in an endangered situation right now. We can no longer defend America on 2 fronts as we've been able to do since World War II. And now it's even questionable, according to the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, which is Admiral Winifred, that we could even do 1. So it's a serious thing. Second thing that he's doing in this country is his war on fossil fuels. Now, I know there are a lot of Democrats here. Let me assure you that this is not, it's different in Washington than it is out here. The Democrats are pretty much disciplined. They do pretty much what the leadership tells them to do. But on the war on fossil fuels, we can be completely independent in America, totally independent from any other country in a matter of months. Now, they deny this. Because what they are trying to do is keep from using any kind of coal, oil, or gas. This is the war on fossil fuels, and it's headed up by Obama. So it's just a real tough thing. They try to kill hydraulic fracturing. Well, right now you can't get into these tight formations. That's why we're so prosperous right now in lots of parts of the country. Do you guys remember Harold Hamm? Do you know who he is? Arguably, he's the most successful independent producer in America today. And he's from here, and of course, I was in Enid last night. That's where he originated from. I've been fighting this battle on trying to keep fossil fuels in America for ever since Obama got into office. And I had the opportunity to be on a real liberal show. It's the Rachel Maddow show. Anybody here watch Rachel Maddow? No. Yeah, you shouldn't. But nonetheless, I like to be on the show. I'm the only Republican who likes to be on her show, and I like to do it because you're reaching an audience you can't otherwise reach. And so I was going to be on, and they were going to challenge me on this issue that Obama keeps saying, Inhofe, he used my name on this. He said, Inhofe, you're wrong. If we were to go open up our public lands, our federal lands, it would be 10 years before that would reach the economy. So I called up Harold Henn. I said, Harold, I'm going to ask you a question. And I want you to really think about your answer, because I'm going to, however you answer this, I'm going to use on national TV tonight. And so I said, if you were to set up in some area that's been off limits, like in New Mexico or someplace, your equipment, how long would it take your first barrel of oil to reach the economy? He said 70 days. See, the president's been saying 10 years. 70 days. And then he went on to say what was going to go on each day for 70 days. And I used it. I have not been challenged on that since then. They're still saying 10 years. But nonetheless, we have that opportunity. In parts of the country that didn't, people used to always think of just western part of the United States as being the oil belt. But now, with the Marcellus, you have New York, Pennsylvania. It's the second largest employer in the state of Pennsylvania. And so it's a huge deal. So that's the second thing that he's doing to this country that nobody talks about. And the last thing is the hardest to explain unless you're in business. And a lot of you in here know what I'm talking about. The regulations that are taking place right now. As you know, I single-handedly took on something that was very unpopular at the time, the global warming thing 12 years ago. Now, they can't even get 30 votes in the United States Senate to pass cap and trade. So they're trying to do it through regulation. Now, that's the kind of regulations, the EPA regulation. I had Tom Buchanan. Tom Buchanan was just elected the president of the Oklahoma Farm Bureau just a few days ago. And he was yesterday morning in a meeting in Oklahoma City. And I made the statement. I said, you know, farmers are concerned with the Farm Bill, but not nearly as concerned as they are the overregulation. And he said, we are much more damaged by the overregulation than anything that would be in the Farm Bill, like the spill prevention. Now, if anyone in here is familiar with farms, know that what they're trying to do is set up every farm to be just like a refinery, and having a whole bureaucracy crawling all over to see how you're storing your diesel fuel and all that. So anyway, those are the three areas that I think that we need to be talking about, and they've kind of been overlooked because all people are talking about is Obamacare. And by the way, a month ago, I had 4 bypass surgery. I had open heart surgery. And it was something you guys need to listen, particularly those of you who are approaching, I'm older than all you guys, but those even in their 60s, when you go in, you have to have a colonoscopy, or you should have every 7 years. I think most of you have had that. Well, I was in there to do that. This is a month ago. And Tom Stafford, remember Tom Stafford, our astronaut? He's one of my best friends. He said, well, I will be with you tomorrow. And they said, well, no, because the staff had said, Inhofe's going to have a colonoscopy, and that takes you out for a day because it's a general anesthetic. He said, no, tell him not to do that. Instead, have a virtual, any doctors in here? Have a virtual colonoscopy. That way you don't have to have an anesthetic. In fact, you just fill you full of water and run you through a tube and take a picture, and it's over. So I did that. Because of that, they didn't just go in and examine the gut. They got everything, and the doctor came in, this is just a month ago. He said, Inhofe, you got bad news and good news. And I said, well, what's the good news? Good news is your colon is fine. What's the bad news? You're dying. And so I had two that were 100% obstructed, 2 that were 90%, and they said, look, it's a matter of days. We've got to operate immediately. And of course, rather than do it in Washington, I flew back got off the plane and on the table and had 4 bypasses. Feel great. I mean, I recommend it. People are saying it's scary. I mean, it really is. But here's the problem. It's a message I'm giving you guys. Don't wait for symptoms. I had no symptoms whatsoever. Most people have symptoms when that happens. But if you don't, you find out, you know, I wouldn't be here today if that hadn't happened. So I threw that in for nothing. Now, what I'd like to do is just open up any questions you guys have, and I do have a handout. Let me mention one thing. I'm proud to have been ranked as the most conservative member of the United States Senate more than any other senator. That's by count. I don't think anyone questions that. However, there's 2 areas where I am really, I don't like to use the word big spender, but if you read the Constitution, it says what we're supposed to do up there is defending our country, defense, and infrastructure. And that's what I do. And I'm very proud. And I have a handout. Did you bring that, Cale?
Yes.
The handout? All right, wait till they leave. And I ask you to read this because we're doing the WRDA bill now. That's the Water Resources Development Act. And they have things, the infrastructure things that we're supposed to be doing, roads, highways, and all of that. So that's the area that I really feel government's supposed to be doing. And so that's where I'm.
Senator, can you talk a little bit about where we are today with Iran disarmament, and then how Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel is reacting? Can you bring us up to date on the situation?
I can, because first of all, Netanyahu, he's been a real good friend since long before he had this position. I just think the world of him. And he shakes his head and he said, why? After 9/11 in the United States of America, don't they realize that there are terrorists out there that want to kill them? And that's true in this country. It's mind-boggling to them. Ever since 1948, they've had 7 wars. They consider a level playing field to be outnumbered 2-1. They're great warriors. They take care of themselves. They're great partners of ours. And don't think that we're sending money and equipment, Patriot missiles and all that over to them. They're doing things for us at the same time. For example, the UAV technology, unmanned vehicles. They've come up with a lot of that we're using their stuff. So they're our #1 partner in the world. And our only true, consistent, 100% friend in the Middle East. So anyway, it's the biggest problem, the threat to this country right now is also a threat to Israel, and that's Iran. Now, they try to tell you that John Kerry's just as bad as Obama. And they try to tell you that we have new leadership in Iran, and it's kind of like Gorbachev was back in they tried to do that, and Reagan knew better. But our intelligence, and this is not classified, has told us since 2007 that Iran would have a nuclear weapon and would have the delivery system by 2015. That's just a year away. And when I said, I was talking about what Obama has done to our military, I mentioned the ground-based interceptor in Poland. We have 33 ground-based interceptors. They're all on the West Coast. So at that time, when that was designed, they never thought that we'd have the threat coming in from the east. Well, now we know that they're going to have that, and that was built to defend ourselves against an incoming missile from Iran, and he took it out. And now, so that's how desperate things are. Now, you ask about Israel. They have the same, threats, and a lot of times, yesterday, I think twice, people asked the question, what's going to happen with Syria and some of these, where is Israel going to be? I'm very careful not to answer that question, because if I do, I could just see it in the New York Times the next day. Inhofe is, well, I'm not going to say that either. So anyway, if you'll just remember what happened in Syria about 8 to 10 years ago, things got so threatening that they took care of their own problems. We want to be their best partner and continue to do that. And one of my missions is to try to let people in this country know what's out there. I look back at the good old days of the Cold War. We had 2 superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. They're predictable. Mutual assured destruction meant something back then. It doesn't mean anything to terrorists. They want to die. And so it's a totally different world now. And so we have these threats, North Korea, Syria, Iran, that are out there that are greater threats really than the Soviet Union was at that time, because as I said, the mutual assured destruction meant something. It doesn't mean anything to these guys. So it's a very threatened world, and we've got to stay with, and I'll even expand in the Middle East and say that the big controversial issue on Egypt, whether or not we should be helping them with the F-16s and all that, you got to keep in mind, that started with the Camp David Accords. And Israel would be in serious trouble if Egypt, if we abandoned Egypt, which we're doing right now. So I forgot what your question is, but that's the answer.
No, that was good, thanks.
Senator, Democratic leadership in the Senate recently lowered the threshold on filibusters. Can you tell us exactly what that procedural move?
Huge deal. This the last thing we did before we had the recess for Thanksgiving. Was the nuclear option. That's what they called it. And so Harry Reid and the Democrats decided that since everybody, I'd say everybody, not everybody, but almost everyone agrees Republicans will take control of the United States Senate in the next election. I have no doubt in my mind that that'll happen. They have no doubt in their mind either. They won't say it, but they do. So in preparation for that, they say, we're only going to have this president for 2 more years, and then we're going to have the Senate Democrat for 1 more year. That's all. So let's see what we can do for a lasting legacy for Obama. And that legacy is to stack our court system with the most liberal judges you can do. So to do that, historically, it's always been, they had to confirm them with 60% of the United States Senate. So they lowered it to 51%. So, and that's because they have 56 lined up that will support any liberal candidate. So it's a real serious thing because, and I'll just predict something, you'll hear about this probably in the next couple of months. They already have picked out 3 very, very liberal. One of the ladies, judges, is one of the leaders in abortion in this country, pro-abortion. The guy that is going to be one of the 3 judges in the D.C. circuit is, and will be confirmed as a result of this action that he's bringing up, is one of the big anti-Second Amendment rights guys. So they're going to be busy in just one circuit. That's the D.C. circuit. They're going to have 3 judges that will be confirmed in 5 minutes on the floor of the Senate because it only takes 51 instead of 60. It's a huge deal. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, after that happens, and as soon as we get a conservative in the White House, I think that we have to offset that and do the same thing that they're doing to try to get our judicial system back. I wish more people would ask that question because the people are not aware that what happened just last week.
Does it just apply to judicial appointments, or is there other?
Everybody else too. The only exception is the United States Supreme Court. All other appointments, such as EPA directors and people like that, normally it takes 60, but it's 51% now, and they do have 56 votes for almost anything that Obama wants.
I had a question on what's being swept under the carpet in Benghazi, and why were we told to stand down?
Oh my gosh, wonderful. I'm sure glad I came. Yesterday it was worded a little bit differently. Somebody said of all the scandals that Obama's been involved in, what's the worst? And I said, it's not what you think. It is Benghazi. The ambassador who was killed was a good friend of mine. He was in my office right before he went over there and was talking about the threats in that whole region. And but this is right before the election. And if you'll remember, Obama was trying to say, we've now solved all the problems in the Middle East. We're moving all of our assets to the Far East, to the Pacific Rim. And so that was, and then when Benghazi took place, we had letters from Ambassador Stevens and from other people talking about the threats that were going to be coming up, and that organized the Taliban. Everybody was, the professional terrorists were there. And so when this actually happened, We knew that was 9/11, we knew on 9/12, the day afterwards, it was an organized terrorist attack. Our intelligence knew it, we knew it, and yet they sent Susan Rice to the Sunday shows to lie to the American people and say that this was all a result of some video, knowing that they were lying. I'm familiar, I've done studies of the cover-ups, Watergate, all of them, that this is going to go down in history as the greatest cover-up there ever was, and it resulted in loss of lives. So all these people sitting around talking about having hearings, saying, what can we do to keep this from happening again? That isn't the issue. The cover-up is the issue. And I think more,
But could we respond and
the fact that, how serious this thing is and how we knew that it was happening, and that was the pre-cover-up took place. So, yeah, they could have done it, and you've heard a lot of people now talking about, well, we had assets in place, we had F-16s that could get over there, we had, it could have been stopped, and it wasn't. It's the greatest cover-up in the history of America. Yes.
Senator, for a community bank like us, a terrible, horrendous hardship has been the Frank Dodd Act. It's been costly and timely, and it's taken us out of...
You call it the Frank Dodd Act, you said the Dodd-Frank, I've never heard that before. Okay, that's good. Same guys.
It is.
Neither one of them are around anymore.
No, but is there any relief to any of that?
No, there isn't. Here, this is interesting. We're standing at a bank right now, and you're asking the logical question about the over-regulation. But it's not just the bank, not just the financial institute. Yeah, Dodd-Frank was a killer. It is over-regulation. But if you were speaking as Tom Buchanan, head of the Farm Bureau yesterday, was speaking, the same thing is happening to the farmers in America. Over-regulation. The same thing is happening to the manufacturers, the developers. So if misery loves company, there's a lot of company out there to enjoy this with you. Yes, it's not going to be resolved until we change the control of the Senate and the White House.
Do you think at that point there is some option for that to be resolved?
I do. I'm certain.
It's a cost that we've had to, take on ourselves and also pass on to our customers.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
taken us out of the home residential market. And it's just
I
been a
know.
terrible hardship for us.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, but again, you're not going to get it until even changing the control of the Senate. That'll be a little bit of help, but it won't be reversed, because you have to have not just a majority, but a veto-proof majority or a new president. That's not going to happen for another 3 years.
I think I'm looking for reassurance from the Republicans in the Senate and the House that they are not going to go back to being gentlemen, and since the Democrats have done this, the change in the filibuster rule and what it takes to appoint someone, only 51%. I think I'm looking for reassurance that the Republicans will not give that back when they do get back in power.
I like to hear that, because Republicans like to be good guys.
Yes.
And they get there, and I think maybe I didn't say it clearly enough, but when I said what they're going to do to our court system, I said, when we take over and we have a president, I want to get at least as many appointments the same way that they did through our judicial system before we turn it back the way it should be, and that is back to a supermajority. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's that game has to be over.
Absolutely.
Senator,
You mentioned one thing about Obamacare that I did this on the floor of the Senate. You guys remember when Ted Cruz did it? It wasn't a filibuster technically, but we used up all night long, and I wasn't up all night long, but 12 of us put that together. So I was up the night before and the next morning. But what a lot of people don't, and I gave this the long version, I'll give you the short version. I said at that time, what they really want with Obamacare is a single-payer system. Now, if you don't believe that, I will give you quotes from Harry Reid when they asked him the question, do you really want to ultimately have a single-payer system? He said, yes, yes, definitely yes. and Obama said the same thing. That is socialized medicine by definition. That's what it is. That's what they've had in all these countries that haven't worked all these years. So I gave a talk on the floor and I said, less than a year ago, now keep in mind, get our time straight on this. This is before this happened to me. I said, less than a year ago, my wife had to have emergency open heart surgery. She's a year younger than I am. If we had been living in Canada, we would have had a mandatory wait of 6 months before we could do it. She would be dead today. If we had been living in UK, the mandatory waiting period is, for that particular age and that particular problem, is 2 months. Not knowing that 2 weeks after that, the same thing happened to me. I said, so that's how serious this is, how personal it is. This Obamacare, yeah, I don't like all the things they talk about. They need to talk about the fact that that is the road to socialized medicine, which they admit they want to do. And, so I want to get personal on that one.
Senator, one of the things that's fueling the oil boom is the hydraulic fracturing or fracking, they call it, and there has been legislative attempts in Washington to restrict that. Where do you see that going?
This is administration. He's been trying to, let me, you're right. The first hydraulic fracturing took place in Oklahoma way back in 1948. There's never been a case of groundwater contamination, a proven case as a result of groundwater, of hydraulic fracturing. But they're trying to say there is. And the strategy that the president had, I'm going to tell you a story that I haven't heard in a long time. It's something that happened that it makes your point. The Democrats in Washington, when they have a joint session of the legislature, all the Democrats sit over here, all the Republicans sit over here. So when there's something that is extreme and liberal, they all stand up and they applaud. And if there's something about a strong national defense, then the Republicans all stand up and applaud. And they finally caught on to the fact that their liberal agenda is not popular around the country. So they said, what can we do to stop people knowing how we're responding? And they thought it was a brilliant thing. They came up with date night. Now, every Democrat was going to have a date who was a Republican. I was the most sought after date of that particular session. And so the one who won was Barbara Boxer, and she was sitting next to me. So the president came out, this is just 3 years ago, and he said, you know, we have an abundant supply of cheap and good, clean natural gas, and this. And I nudged Barbara, and I said, Barbara, are you listening to this? She said, wait till you hear what he says next. And right then he said, but we got to stop hydraulic fracturing. Now, without hydraulic fracturing, you don't get into the type formations. You can't get into this shale and all of that. But what I'm trying to say is, he had told them, tipped them off, don't get upset when I say this, because it may have taken Nancy Pelosi 6 months to realize that natural gas is a fossil fuel, but people knew it by that time. So, yeah, that's a great question, because what they tried to achieve in killing oil and gas in America, knowing that the public wouldn't go along with that, would say you support oil and gas, but you want to stop hydraulic fracturing. Now they're just a lot smarter than Obama thought they were, and they realize that they can do it. So they're trying to federalize the regulation of hydraulic fracturing, which doesn't work, and they have not been successful in doing it, and they won't be successful in doing it.